Well, I think the people up here need no introduction, especially after that film, but I'm so honored and excited to be sitting down with director-producer Tia Lesson and Woman of the Hour. So just to jump off from here, I was curious what it felt like after so many years as a storyteller yourself to be the subject of the story, and that, you know, it's such a leap of faith to trust your life story to someone else. So I was just curious how this whole project came about.
Well, when Tia and Carl said they wanted to do this, it was, for me, it was saying, well, do I accept two stalkers into my life? But, I mean, who could be lucky enough to have such masterful, compassionate, and brilliant directors involved with a film that focuses on intimacy? And it was a small price to pay, yet losing some privacy, but gaining an international platform in a world that overlaps with, but is not exactly the same as Democracy Now! Making a film that can, you know, we have Democracy Now! Is an amazing brain trust of people, as you saw, all the people interviewed, from Juan Gonzalez, who had 2 ENs in his life, the New York Daily News, which he was with for 29 years, and Democracy Now! For the full 30 years. Nermeen Sheikh, co-host on Democracy Now! So wonderful and important to the show. Jeremy Scahill, who got his start in Democracy Now! Sarika Bel-Caduce, and Treat and Jeremy now do drop site news. Help to Start, The Intercept. David Isay, who went on to found StoryCorps, which is such important work. It has been such an incredible journey. And to document all those people in front of the microphone and the cameras and behind was really such an important, I think, act of love. And at this point, more than ever, we need a model of independent media in this country and around the world, so that when we're covering war, we shouldn't have to cover war. We cannot afford war in the 21st century. But as long as we're doing it, we can't be brought to you by weapons manufacturers. When we cover the climate crisis, not to be brought to you by the oil, gas, and coal companies. It is so important that there be an independent media outlet out there more than ever, and we need more than ever. And a huge shout out to KPFA, the first.
Tia, can you talk about why you called it Steal This Story, please?
Well, we stole it from Amy. Yeah, when I was sitting and interviewing Amy, she invoked that mantra, and the minute I heard it, I was like, oh, you know, because we've been steeped ourselves in this footage over a 30-year period, and time again, we saw Amy's seminal coverage over the years being picked up and rebroadcast and gotten out to across the country and around the world. And she had such a generosity of spirit about it. In fact, more than that, I think it was part of her practice of journalism. this is not our property. We only matter if our stories make it wide. And so it's sort of contrary to traditional journalism where you want an exclusive, and you want to be the only one on this. And I think, Steal the Story, please let it be captured Amy's generosity spirit, but also kind of her plucky. She's a little mischievous.
And I consider it exclusive a failure, if no one picks it up. And so you see with Standing Rock, the epic gathering, this historic assembly of thousands of indigenous people from Latin America, the United States, First Nations from Canada, and non-native allies. And that was the year of Trump versus Clinton, Hillary Clinton. And in those presidential debates, not only didn't they raise the standoff at Standing Rock, but the moderators did not even raise climate change. And so when we went out there Labor Day weekend and got this footage, of course we shouldn't have been the only ones videoing this attack on the water protectors by the DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline security guards, armed with dogs. Sorry, Sausage. And all of you were around and you could have protected us. You could have licked all the people who got there.
Very soon.
We love you, Sasu.
I have to tell you a funny story, and this goes to film festivals, by the way. Carl and Tia are award-winning directors. They were Oscar nominated for Troubled Water out of Hurricane Katrina. Tia won 3 Emmys for the James Valley Underground Abortion Network in the 60s in Chicago. They were Michael Moore's producers. But learning about the film festival circuit has been new for me. They travel around the country and I'm tagging along. It started Owen Tellier IDC before that, and it went all through, but we were talking about Zazu. So and they have won so many audience favorite awards. I don't know, is this unprecedented? Something like well over a dozen either audience favorite, best film in a festival, or best documentary. And that's really special because it's from the audience, and also grand jury prizes. We're talking about from Santa Barbara to Santa Fe, from Seattle to Woodstock to St. Louis. Most recently we were in Savannah. And it's such a tribute to their prowess. But in Woodstock, the film had screened at the Woodstock Film Festival a few weeks before, and I was visiting a friend up there, and I got out of the Rhinecliff train station, and me and Zazu were walking around, and one goes, "Oh my God," a woman who's waiting for another passenger, "Oh my God, oh my God." She said, "Is that Zazu?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, how did you know her name?" And so she said, "I just saw a film at the Woodstock Film Festival." And she said, "Ma'am, can I pet her?" I said, "Listen, I'm just the dog walker, but I'm sure it's
I knew Amy was like a stand-up comic.
So a little bit earlier, Amy, you were alluding to some of the challenges around journalism and the industry these days. Sorry, not to take you down to a dark place. There are attacks against journalists, sometimes literally physical attacks, criminal charges for the work of reporting, the Pentagon trying to force reporters to sign a loyalty oath, and so only having handpicked, curated yes press right now. So it makes this film and the work that you do in independent media seem even more important. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and kind of the lessons we can learn at this time that we're all trying to navigate, this I think critical juncture in journalism, and can we continue to have an effective free press?
It's extremely important. President Trump calls the press the enemy of the people. Now, he is a creation of the media, and he knows that. He is masterful at manipulating the media. But he, more than anyone knows, the same force that made him president of the United States twice can also unmake him. And he is cracking down in a fierce way. I think of particularly women journalists and women journalists of color. I mean, continually attacking them. Be quiet, piggy, you're ugly, you're stupid, why don't you smile? As one reporter says, I don't smile when I'm asking about dead soldiers, as survivors of sexual abuse. These are extremely serious times. Amanda, because you asked about the crackdown on journalists, I wanted to raise one person right now, Ahmed Shahab Eldin, who is a Kuwaiti-American journalist. I heard about this weeks ago. It only recently became known because he was taken by Kuwaiti authorities. He has something like 2 million followers. He has worked with Vice, Frontline, Al Jazeera, the New York Times, I think. He hardly did something radical. He, I think, put on his own social media video that was reposted. He reposted footage verified by CNN of an F-15 fighter jet crashing in Kuwait. Right, this was so-called friendly fire, and they took down the jet. And he posted the reality of this. And he has been taken by Kuwaiti authorities. I think, we recently did a talk back with CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists. You can go to cpj.org. I think they have all sorts of petitions. But here he is in prison. We know, of course, in Gaza, hundreds and hundreds of journalists have been killed. Most recently, in the last 2 weeks, Al Jazeera reporter, Israel does not deny they killed him. They bombed his car. Journalists are under attack around the world. We have to highlight this. There's a reason why the First Amendment is enshrined in the Constitution, the First Amendment. It's about the public's right to know. And there's no more serious time than when a country decides to go to war. So often the media circles the wagons around the White House. It's exactly when we have to ask the most serious questions of those in power. And that's what we do at Democracy Now! And I think that's what Tia and Carl raised in Steal This Story, please.
Related, something that we had been talking about just before the film was about how the increasing media consolidation, and also how there are fewer and fewer independent entities and ownership, with the more billionaire, the media becoming consolidated under a few billionaires, companies merging. And Tia, you've been involved in protesting that around, because it's happening both in journalism and around film and television universe as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, first, I want to give a shout out to Amanda Pike and the Center for Investigative Reporting. Such an important independent, nonprofit source of journalism and documentary filmmaking, and thank you so much for everything you do and for Reveal. And also to JFI for sponsoring this screening. Amy has been sounding the alarm about media consolidation for 30 years. You see her in the film. We found this clip of her on C-SPAN in 1998, saying some things that are, would be totally resonant today. And it was sort of not lost on us that year when the Telecommunications Act passed, lifting these restrictions on cross-ownership of the media, lifting restrictions on the number of broadcast stations one entity could own. It was the same year that Democracy Now! Went on the air, 1996. So, as we saw Democracy Now! Over the years just get bigger and bigger and wider, and dealing with more and more public media stations, the reverse was happening in the corporate media. There was just a shrinking of sources, of news sources, of storytelling sources, and we're really seeing that on steroids now. And so this week I joined Carl and I joined with about 1,000 other artists, filmmakers, actors, including our executive producers, Jane Fonda and Rosario Dawson, Julie Cohen, and our producers, and a lot of Hollywood folks who are coming together to say this looming merger with Warner Brothers Discovery being circled by Paramount, it is catastrophic for not only the studio system and theatrical distribution of independent films, but also for journalism and for documentary storytelling. Warner Brothers owns CNN. Paramount now controls, Skydance Media. Larry Ellison, who's the CEO, is a big Trump ally, big Trump donor. Larry and his son David, and they control CBS. We're talking about the consolidation of two major networks, and including a network that Donald Trump has been targeting. He's been gunning for CNN for years, most recently threatening to file criminal charges because he doesn't like the way they're covering his war in Iran. So we signed this letter to say it is not a done deal, that there is time for the state attorney generals, particularly in California and New York, to investigate the implications for audiences, for consumers, and also for storytellers. And we're hoping that we put the brakes on that. So we are also distributing this film independently. We weren't delusional. We understood that if we had a film talking about corporate consolidation and Donald Trump and Gaza, that it wasn't going to find its way onto the commercial airwaves. But we are in the tradition of many documentaries of late, distributing this film ourselves. We have 100 theaters booked at the moment. In New York City last weekend, we had the biggest box office for any documentary at the IFC Center in a decade. I'm a good filmmaker, but she's lovely. And Zazu.
We're just the dogmas of this, my dog turd.
And the core of that is this sense that we've now gotten since we've been on the road with this film, that audiences are hungry for films that speak to this moment, for anything that speaks to this moment. And we're not going to get that from the corporate entities because they're too busy obeying in advance and capitulating and acquiescing to this authoritarian regime. So we're so proud to be taking this across the country. We're also supporting public media stations everywhere we go. When we were here at the Mill Valley Film Festival, we did a fundraiser for KPFA. There was just a fundraiser last night for KPFK in the Bay Area, WBAI. We have about 15 different community stations that are going to do fundraisers in coinciding with our opening and coinciding with Amy's visit. And this is particularly important right now because in January, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting closed its doors. And there's no longer any federal funding for public media. And we cannot let corporate America step into that vacuum.
Hell no.
I just want to say that this film highlighting the dangers of corporate media, it's so important as media takes on all different forms. We can't predict what it will be. It's consolidating fiercely and fast right now. But this sends, when a film like this, a political documentary, gets out and is this successful, it sends a message as the media reshapes itself that people are hungry for independent voices. And so just you coming out is such an important signal, and telling your friends, I often use, I'm pitching on Democracy Now! All the time, sealthestory.org, to look at the list of all the places where it is showing and getting word out to everyone all over the country. We're going to be in Sebastopol, and we're going to be in Seattle and Portland, and the awards that have been won as far away as Oslo, Norway, and it's going to be in film festivals in other parts of the world as well. But every single showing, when it sells out, it is a message to entities that form in the future that this should be the media of the future. And that's what the media is.
Incredible institution, the Roxie Theater, and other organizations.
I was curious what your reaction was when you saw the cut of the film for the first time. I don't know what your expectations were. So I was just curious what that moment was like for you.
Stunned. And actually, when I came into the Roxie today, as we drove in, I happened to come in when you're seeing the scene with my 106-year-old grandmother, who lived to be 108. I mean, she started to complain at around 107 of corns on her toes. And one day, when I told her I was coming to visit Angela, he cannot come today. I'm heavily medicated. I said, and like her, I said, what do you mean, Grandma? And she said, I took a half an aspirin about a week ago. I'm still feeling it. I said, that's okay. I'll come and help you deal with your hangover. But to see, and though I was so deeply touched, and my colleagues, as we all grew together, I mean, they also mentored me, and that community of people together, they are a family, and that stretches across the globe now, and that extends to Tia and Carl. Tia teaches so many lessons, and Carl is a big deal. Carl take on Tia lessons. It has meant so much to so many people, and the images, like when you say, well, how did you feel about you're there telling the stories, now it's focused on you. This is telling a lot of stories, and that is really important, the work that was done over these years, always a group activity. The video being shown all over the world at Standing Rock. President Obama was in Laos having a democracy forum with young people, and one of the last people raised her hand and said, what about those dogs biting the protesters? And he came back the next day, and we got word that he had seen the video at the White House. It wasn't lost on the first African-American president what it meant to have dogs biting protesters. To most recently, Ali Rahman, who we just had on Friday, and we've had her on twice before. She's the American citizen, Minneapolis. She's autistic and is disabled, driving to the doctor like she always does. And ICE stops her, smashes her window, drags her out, injures her badly, and she says, "I'm disabled." They shout back, "Too late." And now that they've seen the video, because she was so shocked, it actually says too effing late. She's taken to jail, she gets out, we interview her after. Ilhan Omar, the Somali refugee Congress member who President Trump calls garbage, as he does the whole community, invites her to the State of the Union. She goes to the State of the Union, she's in the gallery with all the other guests. And you know, the Republicans are standing up, applauding, sitting down, standing up, applauding, sitting down. It would be the other way too if it was a Democratic president. And as he's denigrating the people of the Twin Cities, she stands up in silent witness to what he's doing. And security takes her out again. We had already booked her to be on the show the next day. What is it like that she's now coming to the State of the Union? She gets on and she says, "I'm wearing the same clothes I wore last night because I was arrested, I was jailed, and I just got out and walked over to the studio because I wanted to honor my commitment to Democracy Now!" And she told that story. That description of what happened to her at the State of the Union was picked up by the New York Times, the Washington Post, whatever reporters are left there, because Jeff Bezos and his company have cut the newsroom by 1/3 of the Washington Post. Again, steal this story, please. And when it comes to the film, tell your friends, steal it again by having people, and I don't want to minimize the fact that we're together. The pandemic was such a difficult time, but people all over this country gather together and experience this film. There is no telling what happens next.
Yes, yes.
Obviously, there are a lot of, substantive, important issues in the film. But one thing I was struck by was something you were saying earlier, Tia, who knew Amy Goodman was a stand-up comedian, along with all of her other prejudiced skills. And one thing I loved about your film was how you wove in those lighter moments and how it was funny, and joyful in a lot of ways. And I was just curious what that process was like and how that worked.
I mean, we found that surprising, and as documentary filmmakers, we pay attention to when we're surprised. Because she's dealing with such heaviness every day, and so the fact that she has this warmth and lightness of being, that the heaviness doesn't invade her, and that she's not just like this, because that's the other option, is that you're just so inundated, saturated with terrible things that you just don't feel anything. She's, as you can see, she's a joy to be with, so that was fun, and it was important for us to show that, but also, we need that in this moment, and as our friend Lynn Nottage, the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, has told us, when people laugh, that your mouth is open, your heart is open, and you're ready for some hard truths. And so we've learned in our filmmaking that laughter is just really important. I made a film about abortion outlaws, and it was practically a comedy. So, not a romantic comedy, but I just think that it's like life. There's happy, there's light, and we wanted to reflect that on screen.
I am a devotee of, I started at Pacifica Radio. And Pacifica Radio is community radio. It builds community. The history of Pacifica, KPFA in 49, KPFK in 59, my station BAI in 60. KPFT went on the air in Metro in Houston in 1970, and within a few weeks, it was blown up by the Ku Klux Klan. They strapped dynamite to the base of the transmitter. KPFT got back on their feet a few weeks later. They went back on the air, and a Klan struck 15 times the dynamite to the base of the transmitter and blew it up right in the middle of Arlo Guthrie singing Alice's Restaurant, which I thought was a good song. A few months later, at January 1971, it took them a little more time to rebuild. Arlo comes back to finish a song on the air, and they go back on the air. I can't remember if it was the Exalted Cyclops or the Grand Dragon, because I often confuse their titles. But he said it was his proudest act, because he understood how dangerous Pacifica is, dangerous independent media is. Because when you hear someone speaking from their own experience, it breaks down the caricatures and stereotypes that fuel these hate groups. You know, when you hear someone who sounds like your child, a Palestinian child, or your grandmother, an Israeli grandmother, or your aunt in Iran, or your uncle in Afghanistan, you may not even like your uncle, but it makes it much less likely that you'll want to destroy him. The media can be the greatest force for peace on earth. Instead, all too often, it's wielded as a weapon of war, which is why we have to take the media back.
So just quick last question here. You know, we've all been together, we've had this experience of watching this incredible film and getting a peek behind the scenes of your amazing career. What can we do now? What can we do to support the film, to support you, to support independent media? Like what is a call to action that we can take going forward to like keep the momentum of the film going, you know, forward in our lives and on all the issues that you've raised in the film?
Thank you. Well, everybody know what a QR code is? We got one up there. You can point your camera at it and it will take you to our website, which will tell you where the film is screening in the Bay Area, in Southern California, and ultimately throughout the country. We're in 15 cities now, and we're expanding, as I said. So the single most important thing in terms of keeping this film out there and alive is to tell somebody or two people or three people about it, because it's really a personal recommendation that gets people into the theater. And tell them they'll be surprised, and maybe they'll laugh a little bit, and maybe they'll be feeling like they want to do something. We also on our website have a Take Action page. So if you want to support student press freedoms, if you want to block the merger, if you want to have resources and learn a little bit more about not just Democracy Now!, but so many great independent media outlets, you can go to our website, steelthestory.org. And if you are in community groups and colleges and universities and you want this film in the fall or next year, you can sign up on the website and ask for a screening. You can donate money, whatever you can do. But there's so many groups right now in this moment who are rising to the occasion, and I'm sure here in San Francisco, every single one of you are active, and that's why we love coming here. So.
I'm so respectful of timekeepers because we have a 59-minute show, and it doesn't matter if we say something beyond that, no one's going to hear it.
Are you any rebels and let you speak?
I would just say that films like these that get out all over, international filmmakers have come to Democracy Now! And made documentaries because they wanted to understand, what is this? We know state media, this is in other countries. We know private media, but what is this? Now you all know what this is because it's based on the model of Pacifica Radio, based on the idea that listeners, viewers, readers, supporting media, instead of the weapons manufacturers, the oil companies, the banks and financial institutions when we cover inequality, will bring you, and I don't like to just say the truth, because I think what's missed when we talk about, for example, Trump's Truth Social, it obviously isn't truth and it is antisocial, but it's to counter that, it's not, there is a truth. What we're missing is that there are many truths of people in their own lives, and we need to hear that. That tolerance is what allows democracy to flourish. Every time I see the Nobel Peace Prize winning journalist Maria Ressa in this film saying, the rights you lose today, you may never get back. There is no more critical time right now to be involved. We're not telling you who to vote for, but we're saying we must all be involved. We must go to where the silence is and say something. Democracy.